All right, safety fans, buckle up because today we're going deep, into a world
That's right.
that you know pretty well. I think if you're listening to this show, crane safety, we're talking about OSHA regulation 1926.1424.
Keeping those work areas safe.
Yeah, when you got these big machines moving around.
Big machines, big regulation.
Big problems if you don't know what you're doing.
Exact.
And we're going to break it all down.
That's right.
Not just for the people who are actually running the cranes.
No.
If you are a safety professional.
Absolutely.
You're working on getting your crane operator license.
You got it.
Or you just want to make it home safe at the end of the day.
That's the goal.
This one's for you.
Absolutely. You know, it's easy to think about crane safety, like just stay out from under the load.
Right.
But it's so much more.
Like just don't get squished.
Yeah, don't get squished is a good start.
Good starting point.
But this regulation goes way deeper.
Okay.
You got to think like a chess player, always thinking a few steps ahead.
Okay, so what kind of steps are we talking about here?
Well, think about the swing radius.
Okay.
You've got that massive arm rotating.
Huge.
And OSHA isn't just concerned with where it is at this exact moment.
Okay.
But where it could go.
Oh.
That's where that phrase, reasonably foreseeable risk, comes into play.
Okay, so even if it seems unlikely, if there's a chance that a gust of wind could come by and swing that load off course,
it's a risk.
That's something I got to manage.
You got to manage it.
Okay.
And that's what makes this so interesting. It's not just reacting, it's about anticipating.
Right.
That's why OSHA is so specific about marking the hazard zone around the crane. They want that danger zone clear as day, like a big do not cross tape around a crime scene.
Gotcha. So we're talking about
those bright yellow.
Those control lines.
Control lines.
The warning lines you see.
Warning lines.
All over job sites, right?
Absolutely.
It's physical barriers.
Yeah. You got it. And railings if you can sweep them.
Right.
Think high visibility, clear boundaries. But construction sites aren't always neat and tidy.
No.
What happens when you can't set up those barriers?
Okay.
Maybe there's just not space.
Yeah.
Or the terrain's all messed up.
Good point. What do you do then?
Well, when those physical barriers aren't an option, you double down on those visual cues.
Okay.
Clear warning signs.
Okay.
That's a danger swing crush zone.
Yeah.
Right alongside high visibility markings on the crane itself.
Right on the crane.
Highlighting those no-go areas.
So you can't miss it.
Exactly. It's like a backup warning system.
Gotcha. So no matter what's happening on that site, that hazard zone, it's got to be super obvious.
Unmistakable.
Signs and markings, though, they're only good if people actually know what they mean, right?
You're hitting the nail on the head. That's where training comes in.
Okay.
Everyone on that site, from the ground crew to the supervisors,
everybody,
they need to know instantly what those markings mean.
Right.
We can't have people guessing when lives are at stake.
Okay, so we've talked about keeping people out of the swing radius.
Right.
But what about those times when someone absolutely needs to be in that zone? Maybe there's some kind of essential work that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And the operator, they can't see everything.
They can't have eyes everywhere.
What happens then?
You're bringing up another critical piece of the puzzle. Communication.
Okay.
When someone needs to enter that hazard zone.
Yeah.
Especially if they're out of the operator's sight, there has to be a rock-solid communication system in place.
Okay, so walk me through that. What does that actually look like on the site?
Well, before anyone even sets foot in that zone, they have to let the operator know what's up, what they're doing, where they're going.
Okay.
And the operator cannot, I repeat, cannot swing that crane until they get confirmation through the prearranged system.
Right.
That the worker is clear.
So no assumptions.
No assumption.
No cutting corners.
None. This is serious business.
It's like a very carefully choreographed dance.
Yes.
With every move communicated and confirmed.
Absolutely.
And I can imagine that even a small miscommunication in this environment
could be disastrous.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. There have been accidents, tragic accidents.
Yeah.
Because someone assumed it was all clear.
Right.
Or a message got lost in the noise.
Yeah.
This isn't just about machinery.
Right.
We're talking about human lives here.
Absolutely.
And that's where these regulations really hit home.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're dealing with incredibly powerful forces.
Right.
And a little bit of complacency can have fatal consequences.
Definitely something to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
So we've got one crane.
Okay.
We've got our safety zone, communication protocols, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
What happens when you add another crane into the mix?
Oh, yeah. Then things get a lot more interesting.
Right, because now you've got two of these massive machines operating in close proximity.
It's a whole new ballgame.
So how do they manage that?
Well,
what does the regulation say about how to keep those cranes from basically getting tangled up with each other?
It all comes down to this concept of a controlling entity.
Okay, a controlling entity.
Yeah.
What is that?
So imagine an air traffic controller.
Okay.
But instead of the sky,
right,
they're managing this three-dimensional dance of cranes on a construction site.
Gotcha.
So this could be a dedicated person, a supervisor, even a whole company.
A whole company, wow.
Their job is to make sure those cranes are moving in harmony.
So they're the ones making sure that those massive arms aren't going to accidentally high-plane each other.
Exactly.
Or worse.
Or worse, yeah. They're looking at load weights, swing radiuses, wind conditions, everything.
Wow, so it's a big job.
Big job. And if there's no designated controller, then the responsibility falls on the employers.
Oh, boy.
And that can get really tricky.
I bet, especially if you have multiple companies working on the same site.
Could be a recipe for miscommunication and finger pointing.
Yeah, no one wants that.
Nobody wants that. And that's why these regulations are so important. They force everyone to sit down, figure out who's in charge of what, establish those clear lines of communication before anyone even thinks about starting those engines.
So it's like a pregame huddle, making sure everyone's on the same page before the game starts.
Exactly.
Now, for our listeners out there who are working on getting their crane operator licenses, I imagine that understanding this coordination piece is pretty critical.
Absolutely. This is bread and butter stuff for anyone who wants to be behind those controls.
Okay.
You need to know your crane inside and out, lifting capacity, reach range, all of that.
Yeah.
But you also need to understand how it fits into the bigger picture.
Right, on a multi-crane site.
Exactly.
So it's not enough to just be a good driver.
Nope.
You got to be a team player.
A team player.
Constantly aware of what's going on around you.
Absolutely. And that goes for anyone working near cranes, too.
Okay.
Recognizing those markings, understanding the signals, knowing who to contact if something doesn't look right.
Okay.
It's about everyone taking ownership of safety.
Speaking of ownership, let's talk about something that comes up a lot with folks studying for those operator licenses.
Okay.
Inspection and maintenance.
Yes.
I know the regs have a lot to say about that.
They do.
But what's the real-world takeaway here?
It's simple. A crane is a powerful tool, but it's only as safe as the person maintaining it.
That makes sense.
Imagine getting behind the wheel of a car and you've never checked the brakes.
Yeah.
Would you feel comfortable driving it at high speed?
Not at all. Not a chance.
Exactly. And with a crane, the stakes are even higher.
Yeah, for sure.
That daily inspection, it's not just a box to check off.
Right.
It's about knowing every squeak, rattle, and groan of that machine.
Okay.
You're looking for loose bolts, frayed cables, anything that could compromise its integrity.
So you're really getting to know that crane.
You got to know it inside and out. And regular maintenance, it's not just about keeping things running smoothly. It's about preventing those catastrophic failures.
So it's like treating that crane like your own baby.
Yeah.
You got to know it inside and out, make sure it's well fed.
Keep it hacked.
With oil and grease. And give it a good checkup every single day.
That's a great way to put it.
Because ultimately, your life and the lives of everyone around you depend on that machine being in tip-top shape.
Couldn't agree more. And that brings us to another critical piece of the puzzle.
Okay, what's that?
Communication.
Communication.
We've touched on it already.
We have.
But it's worth repeating.
All right, let's talk communication.
Okay.
Why is it so vital in this context?
Well, think about it. You're up in that cab.
Yeah.
Sometimes hundreds of feet in the air.
Yeah.
Maneuvering tons of weight.
Right.
You can't just rely on hand gestures or yelling over all the noise.
Right.
You need clear, concise communication.
Okay.
With the signal person, the riggers, everyone involved.
It's like a symphony orchestra.
It is.
Everyone needs to be hitting their notes at the right times.
Absolutely.
Following the conductor's lead.
That's a great analogy.
One missed cue could throw the whole performance off.
Yeah, and that communication isn't just about preventing collisions or drop loads.
Okay.
It's about building trust.
Okay.
A shared understanding that everyone's looking out for each other.
And that trust, that's something that's earned, right?
It is.
It's about consistently showing competence, professionalism, an unwavering commitment to safety.
You nailed it. It's about showing up every day,
yeah,
ready to learn, ready to adapt.
And always putting safety first.
Always.
Speaking of learning,
yes,
what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in this field?
Okay.
Maybe fresh out of training, looking to make their mark in the world of crane operation?
First and foremost, never stop learning.
Okay.
This field is constantly evolving. New technologies, new techniques, new challenges, all the time.
So it's not enough to just get that license and coast?
No coasting.
On what you already know?
Stay hungry, stay curious.
Okay.
Attend those industry conferences. Read those trade journals. Learn from the veterans on the site.
Learn from the best.
Yeah, because the more you know,
yeah,
the safer and more effective you'll be.
And I imagine that constant learning also helps to build confidence.
It does.
Which is crucial when you're operating a machine.
Absolutely.
As powerful as a crane.
Confidence comes from knowledge.
Right.
And knowledge comes from experience and continuous learning.
So it all ties together.
It does.
And that confidence It's not just going to make you a better operator.
Yeah.
It's going to inspire trust in those around you.
Exactly. It's a virtuous cycle.
It is.
Learning leads to confidence. Confidence leads to trust.
And trust leads to a safer work environment for everyone.
That's what it's all about.
Well said.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
I
want to touch on something that we've kind of hinted at throughout this episode.
Oh, right.
Technology, we're living in an age of incredible technological advancements.
We are.
I'm curious to get your take on how technology is impacting and will continue to impact the world of crane safety.
That's a great question. And honestly, a topic that could fill a whole episode on its own.
Right.
We're seeing some exciting developments in areas like automation, remote operation, even artificial intelligence being applied to crane operation.
So you can imagine a future
Yeah.
where cranes are basically operating themselves.
It's not science fiction anymore.
Really?
We already have remotely operated cranes being used in certain industries.
Wow.
And the technology for autonomous operation is advancing rapidly.
That's incredible.
It is.
But I imagine there would be some challenges to overcome.
Of course, one of the biggest challenges would be ensuring the reliability and safety of these autonomous systems.
Right. You wouldn't want a crane making decisions on its own.
No.
Without some level of human oversight.
Especially in a dynamic and unpredictable environment like a construction site.
Exactly.
You'd need rock-solid safety protocols.
Oh, exactly.
And fail-safe mechanisms to prevent accidents.
Right. What about the impact on the role of the crane operator?
Yeah.
How would automation change their job?
That's a key consideration.
Yeah.
Automation could potentially shift the role of the crane operator from a manual operator to more of a supervisor.
Interesting.
Monitoring those autonomous systems, intervening only when necessary.
So they become more like pilots.
Yeah.
In a highly automated aircraft.
Exactly.
Keeping a watchful eye on things and ready to take control if the situation demands it.
That's a good way to think about it.
And it's important to consider the impact on other workers on the site, too.
Yeah.
They would need to be trained to work safely alongside these automated cranes.
For sure.
Understanding their limitations and how to interact with them.
That's right. It's a whole new world of safety considerations and training needs.
It sounds like it.
It is. It's a conversation that's just beginning.
Right.
But it's an exciting time to be in this field, watching these technologies develop and seeing how they'll shape the future of crane operation.
Yeah, it really feels like we're this turning point.
It does.
In how these machines are going to operate. But even with all the automation in the world, I feel like there's always going to be a need for that human touch.
That human element.
That intuition that comes from years of experience.
Absolutely.
Construction sites, they're not assembly lines.
No.
You've got unpredictable weather.
Right.
Shifting terrain. Obstacles popping up.
Out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
It's a dynamic environment.
It is.
It demands adaptability.
Yeah.
And that's where human judgment is key.
You can't program a computer to anticipate every single scenario.
Every single one.
To assess all those little subtle risks
you can
that a seasoned operator would just spot.
Right.
Like that.
In a heartbeat, we can give these machine sensors, cameras, all kinds of fancy tech.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's the human brain that's making the call.
Yeah.
Is this safe? Do we need to adjust? Is there something the computer's missing?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's about finding that balance, right?
Absolutely.
Between the precision of all this cool new tech and the flexibility that comes from human experience.
That's it.
And this whole conversation brings us back to this really basic truth.
That's right.
Doesn't matter if we're talking about a simple hand crank hoist or a massive tower crane.
It doesn't matter.
Safety is a shared responsibility.
It is so.
It's not just on the operator.
No.
Not just on the safety manager.
It's on everyone.
It's about everyone looking out for each other.
Absolutely.
It's about communication. It's about having each other's backs.
That's right.
Speaking up if something doesn't look right.
You got it.
And that's where all these OSHA regulations that we've been talking about really come into play.
They do.
They give us that framework.
They're the blueprint.
For that shared responsibility.
That's it.
For identifying hazards.
Yeah.
Communicating those risks.
Yep.
Taking action before something bad happens.
That's what it's all about.
They're not just rules on a piece of paper.
No.
They're a blueprint for building a culture of safety.
On every job site.
On every job site.
That's
a culture where everyone understands the risks.
Yes.
Everyone takes ownership.
Absolutely.
And everyone goes home safe.
At the end of the day, that's the goal.
Well said. This deep dive has been...
I've enjoyed it.
Really eye-opening.
Yeah.
I feel like we've covered so much.
We have.
From the nitty-gritty of the regs to those big picture ideas about technology in the future.
The future's bright.
It is.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you and with all of our listeners out there.
For those of you working towards those operator agencies,
yes.
Remember, This is just the start.
It is.
Keep learning.
Keep those questions.
Keep asking questions.
Yeah.
And never compromise on safety.
Never.
And for our safety professionals out there,
yes,
keep those conversations going.
That's right.
Share this knowledge.
Absolutely.
Foster that culture of safety.
Yep.
Every day that we prevent an accident, it's a win.
It's a victor.
Couldn't have said it better myself. To all our listeners out there.
Yes.
Stay curious. Stay informed.
Stay safe.
And stay safe.
Until next time.
This is The Deep Dive, signing off.